I felt like I just didn't connect with people anymore.
Yeah.
So it almost felt like it doesn't really matter. Like, you're going to cry about it, but you'll be okay. Because you're not getting anything from them anymore anyway.
Yeah. When you were there.
When I was there. And interestingly, there's still people that, you know, I know cared for me very much. But I needed something that I was not getting.
Mm-hmm.
So I just couldn't keep going anymore. And so I left. And when I left, I remember thinking, I want to see like if anyone's gonna look for me. And they didn't.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome once again to the Valley of the Heroic podcast. Today, once again, I'm going to say it, I am excited for today's episode because I'm going to have a conversation that I've been waiting for since I was like, 20 years old or something like that, right? This is a conversation that I have been excited for. And even if nobody watches this, like, I literally don't care. Like, okay, I do care because hopefully there's somebody who gets something out of this, but I am beyond excited for this episode because I have a very, very, very near and dear person to my heart. Somebody who I grew up with. Like, I learned how to live with this person. This person is a sister, and you know, I would drop everything at a moment's notice, no matter how long it's been since we've last talked, to just help this person. And this person is none other than my sister Vanessa, also known as Mayo Kid.
Oh my God.
Yes, we're gonna bring it out, Mayo Kid, and just a sister that I'm so happy to be in the room with today. Like, when she said, hey, let's, you know, what did I do? I put like a story saying, hey, does anybody want to be on the podcast?
Yes.
And you answered, and I was like, literally, this was me. I was like, oh yeah, we gonna make this happen because this needs to happen now. And so, yeah, you know, I want to take a second to just talk about, you know, the fact I already said I'm excited, but I want to say it again. I'm excited. Because we grew up together, you know, like,
Yeah.
I always hand it off to the other person to kind of share who they are. By now already, I would have done that, but I'm just like, I just want to like get even more excited about the fact that it's like, I can't believe we're here in a way, you know, because we went through so much together as kids, literally kids doing ministry, like, especially me and you.
Yeah.
You know, because like out of both of our friend groups, like, we were the ones who got those E's on our cards first. You remember that?
Yes.
Emerging leaders, which was the most disrespectful. I remember when they put that little E on my, we were at youth camp, right? And whoever was a leader would have leader either on their shirt or on their card that had their name, right? So one year we go to youth camp, and it was the first year they told us that we were going to be part of the leadership team, right?
Yes.
And when we got our cards had these little E's on them. And I was like, what does this E mean? And I distinctly remember going to our pastor, Lipe at the time, or some leader, somebody. And I was like, yo, what's good with this E? I know my name is Eric, but what does this E mean? I'm seeing it on Vanessa's ID card or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, that means emerging leaders. Fam, I was like, yo, I've been leading a small group since I was 10 years old. How long am I going to be emerging? But it's so funny because it's indicative of the fact that we were like in the trenches, but also at the same time we had no business being there in a way. And, but yeah, so much went through that. I'm going to hand it off to you because I'm talking too much. I'm too excited. I need to slow down and, just tell us a little bit about who you are, you know, like, what are you doing in life now? what's going on with you. Tell us about your boyfriend, your dog. Don't give the social security number. Somebody might steal your identity.
Noted.
So tell us about you.
So I'm Vanessa, and I'm 35 years old. Can you believe that?
It's crazy.
So we met when we were what? I was
12?
probably younger because I started
Yeah.
going to Fuente when I was 11.
Uh-huh.
And you're a year younger than me.
Yeah.
So a very long time we've known each other.
Yeah.
So I'm 35 now. My life now. I am a manager for a public assistance agency. I've been there 13 years. I had a realization the other day. I said, I've been there 13 years. And I remember starting there in 2011. And I'm like, I'm just going to stay here for 2 or 3 years, finish school, and then I'm moving on to something else.
That's
And
always the
I'm-
trap, isn't it?
13 years later, still there, head of my department,
That's good.
which is good. I did
Yeah.
move up. I'm not going to say I didn't do anything there, but definitely feeling like something is next. Not sure yet, though. You mentioned my boyfriend. I am in a relationship. We just celebrated 3 years together.
Congratulations.
Thank you. His name is Joseph. He's
Shout out to you, Joseph.
Yes, because he's probably gonna watch this, and he's very excited for me. He kept asking me all
Right.
week, like, "Are you ready? Are you
Right,
ready?"
right. Making it worse, probably.
Right, and I'm
You're
like-
like, I am not ready, and you keep asking me.
I know, but he's so kind, and he's so just so different. You know, I think that for a long time I dated a lot of people that were like me. In a lot of different ways, like either personality wise or vision wise, right? And then he and I, our personalities are very different. And it works so well because it's like this balance where sometimes I could be a little rough around the edges. A lot of people know I'm like very much in your face. I'm a leader. I'm like loud. I like
Yeah.
being friendly. And then he's so much more reserved and like calm. It's like this water energy type of thing. I really like that part of our relationship. Very gentle. And I really enjoy being in this relationship with him. He's definitely someone that I didn't expect dating, but it has been such a welcome experience. And I'm just very happy. I can say that very genuinely. And it's coming to me now that like, I think it's been a long time since I haven't said that out loud, but I am
Wow.
genuinely very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, shout out to Joseph. We have a dog. His name is Milo. He is the sweetest little puppy ever. He just turned a year old last week. And having a dog is really interesting because I said I would never have a dog. My sister was actually just here and she's like, I can't believe you have a dog. And everyone who knows me, they'll say the same thing. Because, you know, I grew up with a dog, but it was always like the family dog. I wasn't really interested in that.
Yeah.
Then I became allergic to dogs when I, like, you know, as an adult. So then I was like, oh, I'm never going to have a dog. But Joseph loves dogs. And when he moved from New York to New Jersey in 2021, he had to give away his dog.
Wow.
So he was always like, we need to get a dog and we need to get a dog. And the excuse was like, I'm allergic. No. But I gave in for him. And it has been a very welcome like addition to the dynamic of our family.
Yeah.
You know, the responsibility, obviously, getting up early, feeding the dog, walking the dog, right? But more so like you come home and then this animal is like your little baby. He runs to the door. He's so excited to see you. You could leave for 10 minutes, come back, and it's like he hasn't seen you in hours. And I just love that. It's
Yeah.
been very healing, I can say,
Wow.
too. I think, I don't know. Just something like I could have such a bad day and then I walk in, I look at him and he's laughing and he's like, oh my God, I love you, Mom. I'm so obsessed with you. And I'm like, me too. And I hold him. And that's it. And whatever I was mad at, it just doesn't even matter anymore.
It melts away because
really does.
the joy is just there.
The joy all the time. It's like constant. Even now, coming here to see you, I was like, I wonder if I can bring him. Because he's looking at me with the eyes like, you're leaving me? What?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Oh.
So yeah, so having the dog has been wonderful. Steven actually lives with me too. Steven is turning 24 next week.
That's wow.
Wild.
24?
24. And that's my little family right now. A bunch of testosterone in my house.
Yeah.
No
I have the
estrogen.
opposite. 3 girls plus my wife plus
That's true.
my mother-in-law is with us right now to help Joanna, and then my sister-in-law is staying with us for a month. So it's just completely the opposite
Love
for
that.
me.
But I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
3 girls. Being a girl dad is like the best thing in the world, by the way. So it's just like, I love it. But yeah, it definitely is interesting when you have a dynamic in your household where it's just like it's just you versus everybody else. So I get you. I know that must be tough for you.
I think for me, what happens is you take on, because you're the only woman in the house, like I've taken on like this very nurturing role.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, I think it has been very helpful because for many years I lived alone. And, you know, it was just me doing everything, me being very strong. And there was like the masculine energy was always there, right? Living with both Joseph, my brother, it forces me to be more nurturing, right? They come to me when they need something, like Steven's sick, and he's like, what am I supposed to do? So now here I am.
That's funny.
Being very mothering. Oh, yeah, take this, take that.
Here's
Joseph
a sopita.
too. Yeah. And those are just things that I think if I didn't have them there, like if I was just still living all alone, I wouldn't tap into that. Obviously, naturally, being the eldest, having younger siblings, I used to take care of them. But it's different being an adult and then being in a good, healthy relationship and finding balance, right?
Yeah.
And so having Steven there, having Joseph and his personality there, it forces like that feminine side of me to come out a little bit and feel safe enough for her to be here, right? Like, it's okay, Vanessa, you're safe. These men love you. They can help take care of you, right? That's another part I think that has been healed. Not feeling like I have to do everything. Like, they can take out the trash.
Yeah.
It's okay. They can carry the heavy stuff.
Right.
It's okay. Like, you don't have to do these things. They're here to help support you. And I think that making that decision to live with Joseph, but having Steven being a part of that with us, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love that. I love having him there. He's my baby. He knows that. And yeah, and then now Milo, and he just completed the whole, all the men need you all the time.
I think that's beautiful though. Like it's interesting because what I'm hearing from you is that it gave you an opportunity to slow down.
Yeah.
You know, because when you were alone, so you kind of had to do everything. So you were tapping into what you needed to tap into, not even to just survive, but to thrive even. Right. Like, you know, to make, you know, you were working at your job, advancing in your career, advancing in life, going through all the things that you're going through to be a better person. Because I know you're not trying to be stagnant. You're not trying to be like, you're not trying to stay the same, right? You know, you're looking to grow. And so, but having a family now is giving you that opportunity to slow down because you can take some of the weight off of yourself. And then that time and that slowing down gives you opportunity to tap into things that you kind of weren't tapping into before, you know?
Yes.
Also, feel free to like move the mic however you want so that it's close to you and it gets the arm, you just pull it right here.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's super and I think that's super interesting because you would have never realized that you were going at a certain pace. I'm not trying to say that you were going too fast or anything like that. It's just the fact that them coming in gave you opportunity to slow down. And I just find that so interesting. You said words like parts of you were able to be healed. Parts of you were able to slow down, to tap into the motherly aspect and the caring aspect, the womanly aspect, or whatever the case may be. And it just points to the beauty of relationship for me and how we really can't fully heal apart from relationship. And, you know, just to bring up something that we were talking about off camera, right? Even you being here today, you were like, I don't know if I would have done this if it weren't with you, Eric. And I was like, wow, you know, that is both an honor and something that just like makes me like, oh, wow, that's amazing, because, you know, sometimes it's hard for us to step into the next phase and whatever it might be that God has for you in the next phase of your life. You said you don't know what's coming. Like, you don't know how literal that might be. Like, you never really know what God, like, God is always in the background. And we know that he works in mysterious ways. So yeah, anyways, I'd love to just jump right in, you know, kind of talk about a little bit of, I'd love to hear from your side, because I know I'll just start rambling, but just like a little bit, so give everybody who's watching a little bit of a foundation of what it looked like for you and I in church, and just a little bit from your point of view, where we were, what we were doing, all of those different things, and then kind of just like feel free to just jump into your story.
Okay. So like I had said earlier, I started going to church at 11, pretty sure. My mom was invited by her cousin, Wanda, actually. And originally it was just myself, my brother Melvin, and my mom. My stepfather didn't start going until later. And I remember when I used to go, it was just like, I would just go just to go. I didn't know anyone. And I remember like one Sunday class, I don't know if it was before or after, Lipe approached me. And he asked me if I wanted to participate in, if I remember correctly, it was either some kind of outreach event or something he was doing.
Uh-huh.
And I remember, like, I felt kind of weird because I didn't really know him. I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah,
like, why is he
yeah.
talking to me, right?
Definitely, like, the whole energy is weird for me right now, too. I'm like, he just went up to you that early and was like, yo, you want to participate in this thing?
Like, I don't know. I can't recall, right? And that may happen, right? There are certain things, like, I'll remember certain parts of the memory, but not all of it.
We were young.
Because we were young. But I do recall, like, him coming to me and me feeling really hesitant. Because I'm like, I don't really know this guy, like, whatever. But I remember agreeing. And through him is how I got connected to you.
Uh-huh.
He was doing something where we were both there.
Okay.
Still can't remember what it is, but whatever it was, some kind of church event for the kids. And I feel like that jump-started everything for me. My growth in the church, my connection to you, my connection to God. Mm-hmm. Like, I think, like, prior to that, I was just going just to go because my mom said we had to go.
Right.
And now, through Lipe, it meant something. Like, oh, there's now people that I know, people that I connect with. And so those early years, I don't have like too much memory of them until we either started going to youth camp, or what was it that we used to do on Sundays? You remember when they started doing like basketball?
The basketball tournaments was definitely, yeah.
I think
that was definitely like when we,
yes,
a lot of just like time spent together with Ronnie, Stacy,
yes,
Lipe.
Yes.
Just like all of us, and we were like doing ministry and we were having fun even. Yeah. And our relationships grew a lot. We were spending a lot of time together.
We spent a lot of time together. I think that's when you and I really connected, obviously through the sport, because there weren't a lot of athletic girls in church. And so me being athletic and playing basketball with you guys, it really connected me to my love for basketball, but also like ministry.
Right.
You know, having the community come out, play basketball with us, having the opportunity to talk to them, and really seeing like, this is something that I really do enjoy. And that's really when it was solidified for me. Like, I feel like this is my home. These are my people, right? And so that was what, like, we were like 13.
Yeah, 14, something like that. Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, and I had already been very close to the girls from the dance ministry, as you know. I was in the dance ministry for a couple of years. And if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's how the girls got connected to your group of friends. it was because of me. Like I remember already
Yeah.
being cool with you. I think you were already bringing Steven and Hector.
Yeah, I was bringing all the guys already because
You were
that
already
was
bringing all the guys.
prior to bringing the guys to church, and I was bringing a bunch of people to church already because prior to that, I just kept to myself. Like I didn't talk to nobody.
Yeah.
Like my only friend was Jason. And then when I started having a cell group and I started bringing friends, that was when I felt more comfortable because I had a friend to kind of bounce off of.
Right.
And then it all kind of just the way because the way I remember
Right.
it, because we were kids. Definitely like 13
Yeah.
sounds about right. And it all kind of just came together at the same time. Like you were coming in and getting connected with the dance ministry and the girls and the guys. We were all coming, and it just so happened that we were just two groups of young men and young ladies who were really getting serious about our relationship with God at the same time. And we were just like, yo, you're mad dope. And we all became friends. Like, and then we were doing the tournaments, and it was kind of just like from there it continued.
Yeah. And around that same time as I'm connecting with you, I had started going to cell group. If I recall correctly, it used to be like at Johanna's house, Johanna Fernandez.
Yeah.
And then it would move around. Like we would do it sometimes with Stacy's house, and like I don't know. I remember I think sometimes we would do it at my house. But that like North Hudson group of people, so that's like Stacy, Ronnie, we started doing like, you know, cell group, and I think that really it was such a wonderful time. Like I have like such fond memories. It really connected me with the girls, but also like with, you know, Stacy and Ronnie. These are two people that are so pivotal in my journey in Christ.
Right.
And connecting with them and knowing them really just transforms so much of my journey. You know, I already had the dance ministry and I love my girls, but I don't know, their energy is so infectious, as you know. It was just something else, something so different, something so genuine. Like
absolutely,
it really, really just
like we knew we could rely on them for
all the
anything.
Time.
They were
all
the
time.
ultimate big brothers.
They really were.
Ultimate.
They really were. Yeah. And that's kind of how our journey started. And then sometimes I think about that time in our lives, like we are now these two groups of people connected. We were like, I felt like the dance ministry was like the golden children, right? We had to be kept safe, right? And it started evolving.
Very accurate.
That's really
the
what
energy
it was.
Like
that's what
heavy.
It felt like. That even other girls that went to church, like, you know, I'm good friends with Edith, right? She wasn't part of the dance ministry,
right?
So like my friendship with Edith didn't evolve until much later because we were just like segregated in a way.
Yeah.
I didn't see it like that obviously then. I just felt like I'm part of the dance ministry, so I'm special. And so I have to be protected, right?
Right.
But really, it was really like hyper focused energy in like the protection, right? But there was also this sense of perfection that we needed to uphold as well.
Oh yeah.
So being connected to you and your friends, it was very challenging for our leadership.
Yes. To say it lightly.
Yeah. They were very challenged with our friendship because, you know, the guys were like rowdy and loud, and we
were super rough.
We were having fun.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time we had ever connected with a group of people where we didn't feel like we had to be perfect all the time.
No, like it was super genuine, down to earth, and had it like they probably could have achieved what they wanted to achieve, i.e. protecting us, quote unquote, if they would have gone about it in a different way. In a
different way, for sure.
Because what they did was this. And so we all reacted, right? And yeah, some people like dated each other and stuff like that. That did happen.
Yeah.
But like the base of it was really friendship. Like hardcore friendship. Like we were really like, we were living out the word.
Yeah.
You know, we were kids. We didn't know that, right? But it was really a beautiful thing. And I also understand their worries, you know, especially now as a grown man. I understand. I remember when I was young, I was, especially while it was happening, I was really bitter because we would get blamed for stuff, my crew, because, you know, we were annoying. You know, we were annoying. I remember Jesse Fernandez, right? He's my homeboy now, but he used to be like, yo, y'all were mad annoying. Just walking around screaming, Eastwick. And I'm like, all right, bro. Like, you know, like we were also finding ourselves. We were learning who we were, both in Christ and as people.
Yeah.
You know, and so the constricting and the judgment that came from certain people really didn't help. But then there were people who just loved us genuinely. Stacy, Ronnie, Lipe, Pastor Martin, were people who just like, for me at least, were like, I never felt that from. Then there's other people who shall not be named. You never know, they might be on the podcast one day. Who just like, nah, they saw us, and some of them really wanted to protect you guys. Some people came around later on, but we weren't leaving. Like, we were not gonna leave. We weren't gonna stop coming to church. We were all serious about our relationship with God, and we were there, and you guys were too. And I think that we all kind of just like saw that we all cared about church. We cared about God. And we were all kind of like, we're all the same age. We have the same interests. It only makes sense that we became friends.
Yeah.
And it was just a genuine and beautiful relationship.
It was absolutely beautiful. And as we evolved as leaders, you know, whether it was through, you know, Youth Night on Friday or plays that we would put on or anything, I mean, that bond just kept strengthening with time. It just, you know, I remember I think about this, especially when I see you on social media. I'm like, despite like how our lives have changed, I look at you and I still have that nickname that I gave you, Teddy, right? Because that's still you to me. Despite wherever life has taken us, I'm like, that's still Eric. Even now, that energy still feels the same.
Yeah.
You know, just someone that like, we would go, I would hug you, like big bear hug. We sit, we talk. And even right now in this moment, after so many years of not connecting in this way, that's still what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I know that connection that we had and that friendship that we established was very real.
Yeah, it was.
It was absolutely one of the most beautiful, beautiful relationships I've ever cultivated in my life. Was with you, with, you know, Hector, with Steven, like that is imprinted like a timestamp. Like, if there are one of the most amazing times in your life, we can always go back to that time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And that whenever we did have like challenges, leaning on each other, you know, because like you said, we were growing together, we were learning together, and we were struggling together. So not feeling alone in our struggle, right? If we, you know, were challenged with our journey in Christ, like we would lean on each other. And I really loved having that with you guys.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was such a beautiful time.
Yeah. If anything, I always knew that you especially were one of the people I could go to and you just wouldn't judge me for almost anything.
Yeah.
And because I feel like in a way you understood me more than the guys even understood me. There was just like a grace to our friendship that I always appreciated because a lot of, I don't want to get emotional so early. A lot of other people, I think they expected a lot from me. Yeah. And I remember it was tough, you know, and I think it was because you were going through the same thing. Like, people expected so much from us, and we were 15 years old, 16, 17. We were kids. And while we did get a lot of love, we did not get a lot of guidance.
Yep.
And I want to get, like, I've gotten to the point personally where I've reframed that. I've been able to reframe that, and I'm able to see like that a lot of those people, they were doing their best, right? They were doing the best with what they had.
Right.
And the expectations that I had on my leaders and the failures that I saw and was hurt by, like I'm able to reframe it now and say, okay, I understand, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't hard.
Right.
Right. And then, so I say all that to say that whenever I did mess up or whenever I did fail in some way, I just knew that I could trust you because I knew that you understood me and that you had grace for me. And again, I like you were saying, I still feel that even to this day.
Yeah.
And there's such a beauty to that. Like there's certain relationships that whether they stay close or not, really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because yes, it does matter, but it's notwithstanding the fact that the connection was both genuine and beautiful within its time frame.
Right.
And you could just as easily go right back into it just like this. And that's like, we should all be grateful for all those relationships that we've had that fit within that timestamp. Yeah. Maybe those people failed you eventually in some way. Maybe, there were expectations you had, and maybe even there's some things that, maybe somebody watching might be like, I'm still mad at them about this, but can you celebrate what it was when it was, Yeah. And that's a life lesson right there, within and of itself. But so we got that first phase, right? That to me, that's like the first phase where everything kind of built up, the basketball tournaments, and then kind of like later on, I think was for me, and you tell me if this is kind of how the next phase of it kind of unrolled for you. For me, the next thing was like English ministry. That was when we were like really, really, really top quote unquote leadership. We weren't emerging leaders no more, but we were still kids, right? And like leadership circle, all that for me is like that first part we just described was first phase, and then we have like second phase. Does that sound like right to you, or is there like another turning point?
No, that's how it was. That second phase was when I started doing the English service. Mm-hmm. They would have us give the word. Like I remember the first time Lupe ever asked me to give the word, and I was like,
What? I still have my first sermon.
Really?
Yes, and
oh my God,
it's horrific.
Like, I did not expect you to say that.
Oh my God, it's so bad. I
don't know if mine's floating out there somewhere, but I can imagine it's a little cringe.
I have the CD, and the last time I watched it, I literally watched probably like 10, 15 minutes of it because it was so bad. But also there was like literally something that I said that was super unbiblical. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is so bad.
Someone let me say this?
Yeah, no, because I remember Pastor Martin coming to me after service and he was like, Eric, that was such a good sermon. And for a 15-year-old kid, it was a good sermon.
It was a good sermon. Right.
But, like I'm looking back and I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. But, it's like that whenever we look back. But you're right. We were giving the word. I was 15 the first time I gave the word.
I was do you remember? I was like in the choir. I was like singing at some
Yeah, I remember.
I'm like, who told me I wanted to do this? Who told me I can sing? Who convinced me that this was a good idea?
Oh my goodness.
And like during these times, I have like visions of like really impactful moments for me. Like I remember being up there, and this was when you brought like Jess to church.
Uh-huh.
And I remember that whenever her and I would lock eyes, and Jess, if you watch this, you know what I'm talking about. She would start crying. So then I would start crying.
So
I would
funny.
Avoid making eye contact with her because every time. And I'm like, why do I have these like intense
I feel like I vaguely
emotions whenever I have like some kind of moment where like her and I just meet in the eyes? And I remember her telling me that once. She's like, I don't know what it is, but every time you and I lock eyes.
While
I'm
you
like,
were worshiping, right?
While I'm on, whether it was giving some kind of word or singing. And it was, yeah. that was a time too. And I feel like I grew a lot as a person. I remember feeling like this is who I'm meant to be. Someone that inspires, someone that people feel they can come to talk, that I can guide you, that I can give you advice. You know, in my short life, I felt like I took that role on with a lot of responsibility and a lot of pride. Like, I really did believe that if you came to me and you trusted me with something, I wanted to give you the best advice.
Yeah.
I wanted to lead you in the right way. I wanted you to look at me and feel like I can trust her. I can follow her. She knows where she's going. And that, I took so much pride in that, and I worked really hard. I remember studying the Bible and talking to other leaders. I remember buying books to help me be a better leader. That was so important to me at that time.
Yeah.
And
We were literally the same.
thinking back, it's like, yo, but you're still a kid.
Yeah.
But at the time, it felt like God gave me a job, and I wanted to be the very best at this job. I did not want to let him down. And so I dedicated so much time into growing that part of myself. And intertwined in that. And I don't know if I ever told Lipe that, but also to make him proud. Because I always went back to being 11 years old and him being the first person to ever see something in me.
Yeah.
Like, I was there for a long time before someone said, hey, I want you to do this with me, you know? I feel like you would want to do this. And I always wanted to make sure that I lived up to, and not that I feel like he had this, but I felt like if you have an expectation, if you believe in me so much, I want to make sure that I live up to that.
Yeah.
And that drove me. That lit a fire in me that it was so hard to extinguish. And for years, we stayed on that path. I mean, so many memories. Yeah. I remember for youth camps, being in church till like 1 a.m, agendas, and, you know, what is the program gonna look like and what are we gonna talk about? I remember, if I vaguely remember, I think there were like journals that we did one year. And I remember Tamir being in this room with me and Edith being in this room with me, like, and us developing like study guides for our youth to follow. I mean, that was just a wonderful time.
Yeah.
So dedicated and so in love with this journey. It was, I could never, ever, ever forget how important that was to developing like even who I am today, the path that my life would take and who I would be along this path. Those years were so critical to developing my person, my personality, my direction, just my passion, my goals, my everything, so much. From that Vanessa, like 11 to like 16, 17, I mean, I was just really so dedicated to this.
Dedication is like literally the best way to describe it. If there was anybody in our age group who was like dedicated to ministry, it was me and you. Like, we took that joint serious. I was talking to Lipe recently, actually, and he said the same exact thing about me. And he was like, and I was like, yeah, I probably took it a little too serious. Like, I was just super headstrong about ministry and about serving people and about teaching and about like, just like, you know, how hard I worked on preaching the word.
Yeah.
How hard I worked on to become better at that and practicing and wanting to understand the word. And we were like I said, 15, 16, 17 years old, you know, just like kids who were going through our own struggles in high school, finding our own selves and figuring it out as we went, you know.
And that is such a good point, right? Being in high school with people that didn't go to church and navigating that experience every day, right? Because that was your life Monday through Friday. You had to go to school.
Yeah.
And like, who are you going to be in school? And is it going to be the same person when you go to church?
Yeah.
That was such an challenging part of my life.
Absolutely.
Because I had friends in school that didn't go to church, but I loved them. These were people that I love, that I'm still friends with today. Still very connected, right? But they didn't go to church.
Right.
And how do you reconcile who you are around your church family and who you are with your school family? Because we spent so much time there, right?
Yeah.
And, oh my God, what an interesting experience.
Yeah. Because like if it happened now, obviously we'd be good because we're just going to be ourselves.
Right.
We've gotten to a place where honestly, there's some ways where I'm still learning to be myself.
Right.
But we've gotten to a much better foundation. But back then there was no foundation.
No.
It's like, yeah, we wanted to be like Christ. We wanted to be relevant to our friends.
Yes.
We wanted to understand who we were. And that was very difficult to navigate. And even with that, like, if I'm going to give it to you, because it's weird to give it to myself, but I'm going to applaud how we did.
Yeah.
Because we did a good job.
Yeah.
You did a good job. For all of those years, we held it down.
Yeah.
Like, we took ministry seriously. We took our relationship with God seriously. We took people seriously. Like, even the fact that you said, like, when people would come to you for advice, like, you wanted to give the best possible advice that you had. And I think that people always told both you and I that we had wisdom beyond our years. And I know for sure that was true with you. Like, we were kids giving advice that, like, I used to give advice to adults. We used to be praying for people after service. Like, I think about it now, and I'm like putting myself in like the adults who used to come to English service. We had a lot of youth at English service, but for the adults that did, people who were visiting, and like they have kids ministering to them. Straight up, that's the Holy Spirit.
That was definitely the Holy Spirit.
Like, that's definitely God putting his hand on it, because we had no business.
Like, do you even have enough life experience?
Seriously. But we just cared about leadership. We cared about people. And that right there just points to the fact that anybody who's in any leadership position, ministry, whatever, your experience is valuable. Your growth is valuable for sure. You can learn how to become a better leader. But the fact that you don't have that experience, the fact that you don't have that wisdom or knowledge, does not mean that you can't operate in that gift. Like, you really can, especially if you invite God into it, you invite the Holy Spirit into that. Like, he can take you so much further than you can take yourself. And God was really, really just working through us. With all the highs and the lows that we went through, all the things that we were going through personally and in church especially, he still showed up.
He did.
He still showed up. He was there. He was with us. And we were able to do some amazing stuff. It wasn't easy. It was definitely hard at times. But, like, I think about those moments of you singing in worship. I think about those moments you giving the word, me leading that small group for all the years that I did. Like, these were astronomical feats. These were things that people our age really were not doing. Like, I look at my siblings as I was growing up. None of them really served in ministry. Like, aside from helping with Pro Presenter and stuff like that. Right. And at least all three of them lost their faith at one point and then came back to it. And I think that one of the things that kept our faith for the time that it did through our teenage years was the fact that we were serving and how much we cared about service. And that specifically, at least for me, I don't know if it was for you, but that specifically was what maintained my relationship with God, because I wasn't going home and praying and reading the word every single day, especially in high school. Right. But serving, being able to give to God something, maintained that relationship in a beautiful way. So going back to those years.
Wait, before we move on.
Go ahead.
I feel like it's super important to also mention your mom in this.
Shout out to mom.
Shout out to Jeanette, because for 1,000 years I thought her name was Janet, and it was not.
Everybody called her Janet, yeah.
Everybody called her Janet. But I feel like it's so important to mention your mom in all of this, because if we had a number one supporter in the good, in the bad, in the ugly, it was always your mom.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember telling my mother once, the first time like my mom and I really had a real deep discussion that jump-started our healing journey.
Yeah.
I told her, I was like, I never felt like I could talk to you. But I'm so grateful to have had Jeanette in my life. She was like a mom to me. She loved me that way. I had never had anyone in my life other than my mom who I looked at and I felt what I felt for my mom. And your mom being such an advocate for youth, encouraging us, always believing in us, like her faith in us never faltered. I mean, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it, because in moments where I didn't even believe in myself or had doubts about, you know, can I do this? Your mom always showed up for us, always prayed for us, always encouraged us. I mean, she would go anywhere. You need a ride? She didn't live around here, but she's gonna take you home and she's gonna pick you up. And she's just such a beautiful person, like so unique. And I love that you shared her with us because I mean, she was everybody's mom. She wasn't just your mom.
For real.
She was literally everyone's mom. And her intensity in the way that she loved us. I mean, there were times where we were like, man, okay, Janet, all right. You know, because
relax.
It was so intense. I appreciate it so much more now as an adult than I did as a teenager. Like, I understand why she was like that, because we needed that.
Yeah.
We didn't know we needed it, but we totally needed it. And I think it's extremely important to have someone like that in your life in those years that are so critical. You know, they can be really challenging for teenagers. Being a teenager is hard.
Yeah.
Hormonal changes and all these other things going on in your life. So having someone so steadfast in our life and in our journey, I mean, shout out to your mom for just being the OG. Like, I love her to death. I think she is the most amazing human being, really. And I hope that, I know I haven't seen her in a long time, but I hope she knows that she made such an impact in my life. And I can never forget that. I could never, never, never forget that. So, thanks, Jeanette.
Shout out to Jeanette.
Love you.
And I think that there's a lot of people from that time who feel that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, regardless of what they might have gone through, my mom was like this constant presence.
Yeah.
She was there whether you wanted her to be or not.
Yeah.
And that was like a stability that, you're right, I think that all of us kind of needed. And that stability was undergirded by like this belief. It was almost like irrational belief in all of us. Yeah. She just, like, that motivation was always there. And she just had this engine that she could tap into for like our sake and our behalf. Yeah. No matter what she was, like, I don't know what she was going through to this day. You know, she might have been going through some stuff. She might have been dealing with her own junk. But she was just there, always there, always there, always there. Always. And yeah, I think she'll appreciate that, because she'll definitely listen.
Good.
So yeah, going back to it, now we're more involved in ministry. Now all of a sudden this new thing happens now where, like, 2-3 years in, I don't know, even this, I don't know details, but I guess like 2-3 years into English ministry, now there's leadership circle. And now we're I guess like elders type of thing of the English service. Like, like I still don't even know how to describe it, but I know that we were like we were the people who were running the English service. We weren't just serving. Now we're in strategy meetings and we're trying to help grow the ministry, and we're there, we're working, and at that point it's me of our age, if I'm not mistaken, it's me, you, and Philip.
Yeah.
Just us three, right?
I think so.
And
primarily,
yeah, at that point a lot of people left too. A lot of people weren't coming anymore. Some people like transitioned out to other churches. Some people went through, a process. But we were there and we were serving. And I know how that time was for me. I think that for me, I was coming into, personally, I was coming into a very turbulent time of personal growth and realization of who I am, and dealing and learning about my own spirituality and my relationship with Jesus. And then dealing with the difficulty of a church plant, because that's what it was. It was a church plant. We were completely fresh. Yeah, we were part of Fuente, and we did have things that we could rely on in that aspect. And when we went to youth camps, we had a larger group of people we could rely on. But we were planting a church, essentially, with Lipe. And definitely a lot of pressure. How was that for you?
A lot of pressure, because you have this constant fear of failure. At least for me. I don't want to fail. I need this to succeed. Lipe is relying on us to make sure this succeeds, right? And so I felt like I needed to do whatever it took, sacrifice myself however I needed to make sure that this succeeded. It was really important. It was important to me. It was important to me that it worked. It was important because we had invested so much into it. Like when you put so much love and dedication into something, you want it to be fruitful. But at the same time, I think I started struggling with a lot of anxiety. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it at the time. I realized it later. And because I would get really overwhelmed if things didn't go the way we planned.
Yeah.
If something was off or, and I remember praying to God, I don't know what this feeling is, but I need you to help me because I can't fail. That, oh my goodness. And not because anyone made me feel this way. This was me, myself, doing this to myself because I took it so seriously. It's such a responsibility, and, not being able to identify the feeling or what I was experiencing made it really tough to navigate it. So there was a lot of pressure. A lot more, I think when I look back at it, I was experiencing a lot more pressure, and I don't think that I fully enjoyed the moment because I was constantly putting all this pressure on myself, constantly worrying that I follow through on my responsibility. Am I going to get there on time? And, and not enjoying what it was, what we were trying to build, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I experienced a lot of the fight with perfectionism for me too. And for me, it was debilitating. I think that it's weird because I think what I was able to do was I was able to compartmentalize it. So I still enjoyed ministry. But when things quieted down, that pressure would just rush in. And yeah, I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to get through it. I just kept trying harder. Mm. And the harder I tried, the less I felt like I was living up to the standard I needed to live up to. The harder I tried, the more I felt like a failure. Mm. And, you know, thinking about it now, that's a lot of pressure for kids our age. We already have enough pressure being a teenager. Like you said, being a teenager is not easy. Like that time is like really, really rough for a lot of different reasons. And then we had this added pressure of the expectations and ministry and whatever the case may be. It's almost a miracle that we were able to make it through.
Yeah. And if you think about it, society makes you feel like once you hit 18, right, you have to know what you're going to do with your life.
Right.
Right. And so it's like spiritually, you have to be this. In the physical world, right, in life, you also have to make decisions, go to college, get a job, you know, like, and there's just so much going on that it's very easy to get lost because all these adult decisions that need to be made. And I think if anything, I think a lot of it was like romanticized. I don't think that I was properly prepared for adult life.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting the blame on like church, right? I think there's a responsibility for the church maybe to learn to guide teenagers better into that phase.
Right.
But also our parents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%, yeah.
Like, I don't feel like I was prepared for anything that came once I graduated high school.
Yep.
At all. No guidance counselor at school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my guidance counselors were the most useless.
They were just so
You'd
useless.
see them twice a year.
Like, if you weren't an elite student, it just felt like, yeah, you could just go to community college, you know, or if your grades weren't great, then, you know, just get a job. But there was no guidance about life. Like, actual, like, what is life gonna look like? Because you stop being a kid once you finish high school. And there's this expectation that now, you know, whether you go dorm in school or you commute to college or you don't go to college at all and you get a job, like, what is life supposed to really be like at that point?
Yeah. You're filling out a FAFSA and you're like, what is this?
Right. And signing financial documents that you don't necessarily understand.
No.
So many kids I know got into debt that, you know, they're 30-something years old still paying because they didn't fully understand the ramifications or the responsibility that comes with the amount of loans that they were taking for school, right?
Yep.
And so there's just so many decisions that need to be made. So while that's happening in our life, we also have, you know, our life in Christ that we have to kind of navigate at the same time. And our responsibilities were growing in the church. So our responsibilities are growing here. They're also growing here. And there's just not a lot of guidance on like how to move through that or navigate that. That was a very interesting time, I think, for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think for me, and again, remember I told you that like, for me, the most important thing is you. So, and this is your story to tell. Where do things transition for you? I'll tell you from my experience. Again, I can't remember details very well. I know that for me, it felt like abrupt from one second to another. I just didn't know where you were. And that's how it felt. I'm not saying that that's how it was, right? But we came to a point where you weren't there anymore. And again, well, not again because I didn't say this yet, but I want you to know that that's okay. The journey that you're on is your journey, and God is faithful to you, Vanessa. He loves you, Vanessa. He cares for you, Vanessa. And I'm curious if you could, let us into your world of what was going on once this anxiety started to come in for you, and how things progressed for you, and what that brought you towards.
So, hold on. The fan, the constant like, it's like drying my eyes. Like oscillating. Perfect. That's much better. Okay. Okay, so I believe my journey in Fuente and like in God became challenged when my parents, no, let me take that back. We moved. I used to live in Union City, and we moved in 2006 to Bayonne.
2006, that seems like ages ago.
Yes, in 2006, we moved to Bayonne. I was almost done with my senior year. My mom bought a house in Bayonne, so we moved. And I remember immediately that I did not like living there. Can't really explain why. And so as time went on, everything about the dynamic in my family started feeling different. It was just everything, right, in my home. I think I started noticing more like issues between my parents. My brother started having a lot of struggles, and there was just a lot going on at home.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, because there's no guidance on how to navigate those things, I was going to church and I was still doing everything, but I was really struggling at home. And everything came to a head when my parents separated. My great-grandmother had died in July of 2007, and my mom had left to go bury her. So we didn't go, we stayed here. And I remember when my mom came back shortly after, my parents separated. And no one can prepare you for that discussion or the emotions that come with that. Because if anyone knows me, they know how important family is to me.
Yeah.
And my family was breaking. And so not only was my family breaking, but we also had to leave our home at the same time. My mom had lost the house. And so it was losing my family, losing our home. And there was so much uncertainty. And what I will say about this, what I'm going to say next is, I don't know what the church did for my family. What I will say is, I don't have a lot of recollection of anyone in leadership reaching out to my mom. My mom she was grieving the loss of her grandmother, who was like a mother to my mom.
Yeah.
My mom lost her own mom when she was 15. So my great-grandmother was her mom, right? And when my mom stopped going to church, when she separated from my dad, no one came. And you know my parents.
Yeah.
They weren't just anybody at church. And I remember feeling like, so is anyone gonna come? And no one ever reached out to my mom that I know of. And if you did reach out, maybe it was by phone, but no one checked in on me and my siblings. We're like collateral damage. If anyone's ever experienced separation and divorce of parents, the children are affected immensely. And no one checked in. And that was hard for me because of who we were in this congregation, in this community. And so that was when things started to get hard.
Yeah.
But despite my mother not going back, I still kept going because I still had a relationship with God, and I still felt very much tied to the people that I loved from this community. And so I think what I did, I think this is when I started learning to compartmentalize. I compartmentalized my feelings about the lack of support from my parents with how I felt about youth leadership and ministry, right? Okay, I separated that. But then when I would go to church, I would see how indifferent they were treating my dad, how indifferent they were treating my younger siblings, and even me in a way.
Yeah.
And so I remember that I told my mom I didn't want my siblings to go anymore.
That must have been a tough decision for you.
Because they were being told things about my mom. They were hearing rumors. And these are children that can't really articulate the gossip, right? They don't understand why these things are being said. They're already going through a lot. Their parents are living separately. And so we don't need any more negative experiences, right?
Yeah.
So I asked my dad to stop taking them to protect them, because I felt it was really important that they felt whatever normal could be now, as much of that as possible. And I felt it was very important to protect my mom at all costs.
Yeah.
Because it felt like she was being villainized, and I didn't like that. And so I had asked my dad to stop taking the kids. And I think at first he was fighting me about it, but eventually he did, because he himself stopped going because of his own negative experiences. And so I still kept going to things related to the youth, English service, right? But I completely disassociated from Spanish service or anyone that attended Spanish service.
Yeah.
Because that's where my pain lied, right? But as time went on, I think it was just like a slow progression, right? The people that I was very connected to started leaving. I was dealing with depression. I didn't realize it then.
Yeah.
So I was having a lot of complicated feelings about going to church and being this person in church, but then going home and feeling sad and crying and not wanting to read the Bible and not wanting to do a lot of things. And I went through that period of time for a few years. And in the midst of this, I'm like trying to go to school, I'm working. I feel this sense of responsibility to help my mom. So I want to get a job to help with the kids. The kids are going through their own thing. I'm trying to be a support to them, not taking care of myself in the process. And everything came to a head when in 2011 I got sick and I ended up in the hospital. And I needed surgery. And When I had surgery, that was like these dates are really impactful because of like the experience. But I had surgery, so I remember when I had surgery. April 2011, I had surgery, and my recovery was like, I want to say like 2 months. And I remember till this day the people who came to see me or reached out in my recovery, and it wasn't a lot. And I think that was when my separation was like official.
Yeah.
You know, Joanna reached out to me, Taina reached out to me, Ronnie and Stacy reached out to me. I believe Lipe called me.
Mm-hmm.
But that was it. And people did start noticing that I wasn't going to church as much. Like, I remember your wife. Like, I still have Facebook was a thing then. So she would post on my wall like, hey, Mayo kid, haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
Right? People like started noticing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because, again, we're kids, we don't understand the importance of like fully reaching out.
Yeah.
And so I just like started fading into the background.
Mm-hmm.
Until I just didn't go back.
Yeah.
And by the end of 2011, I had officially stopped going to Fuente.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was a very cathartic feeling, like I was losing a piece of myself by not going back.
Right.
But the pain that I felt when I was there, I felt like I wasn't seen, like I wasn't heard. I felt like I just didn't connect with people anymore.
Yeah.
So it almost felt like it doesn't really matter. Like, you're going to cry about it, but you'll be okay. Because you're not getting anything from them anymore anyway.
Yeah. When you were there.
When I was there. And interestingly, there's still people that, you know, I know cared for me very much. But I needed something that I was not getting.
Mm-hmm.
So I just couldn't keep going anymore. And so I left. And when I left, I remember thinking, I want to see like if anyone's gonna look for me. And they didn't. Leadership didn't. Nobody did. Who I was still connected to was like Rebecca, Edith, you know? But that was it. Nobody looked for me. And so then that's when I felt like, you know what? Then I probably did the right thing.
Yeah.
And years later, I realized that what I felt was abandonment. I felt that when my family needed this community the most, nobody was there.
Yeah.
That's what I felt. Vanessa at 21, 22. I just felt like I gave you the best years of my life.
You did.
And no one ever asked, you know, are you okay? Right? Like here and there, yeah, Stacy, Ronnie, right? But what I felt was like, you know, nobody really cares that my family fell apart, and nobody really cares that I'm depressed, and nobody really cares what I'm actually experiencing.
Yeah.
And I felt completely disconnected. And so when no one came looking for me, I was like, all right, then that's it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I know that was probably hard. So I just want to thank you for the bravery that it takes to share something that, because it's a hard thing to realize, that relationships that you see a certain way are not that way.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's family. It's like we're church family. Everybody who has left Fuente, many people who have left many churches say the same. Nobody reached out. And that's because that's what happens. The church does not do a good job of managing painful situations. You know, I know for me, I want to also add, I want to distinctly apologize for my two things. I know exactly what the two things were. I think of Eric at 21 years old, and I was lost in my own head, only thinking about me, being extremely selfish. And I thought so many times, like, where's Vanessa? And I don't know why. I got my license really late, so I didn't have my license, but I couldn't drive to your house. But I didn't pick up the phone. I don't think I did. I'm almost sure I didn't, because I know 21-year-old Eric. And I think that what you deserved, what you needed, what you should have gotten was relentless love during that time. Like relentless, like almost annoying.
Like Janet love.
Literally, I was thinking about my mom the same. I was literally thinking about my mom when we were like 15, 16, 17. My mom was all up in that. I think that's what you needed. That's what you deserved, because you bled. You bled there. You literally bled. Your parents bled there and served for so long. Yeah. And I think, I knew something had to be going on because I knew you. And because I was both selfish and so stuck in my own head, I didn't even ask. I asked other people. I asked Lipe. I asked Philip. Philip was equally lost in the sauce. Philip is the captain of Lost in the Sauce. Bendito. Yes. I love Philip. Yeah, we love you, Phil.
Phil is awesome.
But, me and him were both lost in the sauce. And I think there was a part of me that just expected you would just come back.
Yeah.
And life takes you on, and before you know it, more and more time passed, and I was just like, yeah, I felt like a piece of me was gone. I did feel that, but I didn't go looking for that piece. And I should have. So I apologize on the church's behalf. And I also grieve the fact that the church does so bad at handling people's brokenness.
That's such a good point, because I think that's truly the issue. And I can only speak for Fuente. That's the only church I've ever been to, right? Anytime something was uncomfortable, they just wanted to sweep it under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And a perfect example of that is, when we were 16, an incident occurred.
Mm-hmm. Several incidents occurred.
I'm going to talk about this incident because it happened in my house, right? Mm-hmm. The guys came over. My parents were away on some kind of couples retreat.
Uh-huh.
The girls are sleeping over, and we invite the guys to hang out for the day. And it's, us, and we're just having such a good time, right? It was so innocent. I'm telling you, it's so crazy, right?
Yeah.
And I can't recall if it's that Danny Cell died. Somehow they were excommunicated from their ride. There was no connection. I don't remember if like the cell phone that we had died. There was no communicating back, right?
There was like, not everybody had a cell
Not
phone.
everyone had a cell
like,
phone.
we just aged ourselves with that.
Right. So I think Danny had a cell phone and Francisco had a cell phone, and somehow they did not connect again. And they ended up staying at my house.
Mm-hmm.
And the story that spiraled from that incident, right? Because that was like a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens the next day? We got to go to church.
Right.
And we were like, we got to get to church. We got to get to church. Danny has the car. And by the time we got to church, the narrative that had spread versus what it actually was, it was mind-blowing to me. And the judgment that came, because like, let's remind everyone, we're kids, right? We're teenagers, we're human. And I remember walking into church and everyone is looking at me, Joanna and Taina. And you can tell that they're judging.
Absolutely, 100%.
And we were walking down the aisle and people were just following us with their eyes. And I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking to the back and they were waiting. Because they had already made an assumption of what they thought happened. Don't get me wrong. They shouldn't have been there. Absolutely. They should have went home. Absolutely. But they did not know how to handle that situation.
Nah.
And they let the rumors run rampant. I mean, then they put us on disciplina, so now we can't dance. So now we're feeling absolutely terrible about this situation.
I think that the whole not being able to dance thing,
right?
That was very damaging.
It was extremely damaging because
Boy, that was
very damaging.
It
was very damaging, right? Because we're already hard on ourselves. Because remember, we actually really love our relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And we already knew when we woke up that morning, we were like, oh my God.
Y'all were thinking about going to church. That says enough within and of itself.
We need to get to church so that we can explain ourselves. So that we can tell you, hey, nothing happened. It was so innocent. This is what happened. It was a mistake, right? There needs to be room for grace, right? And to lead your youth with love. Not judgment, because we're already judging ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, Joanna and I were like, we were just beside ourselves about this situation. And so now being told that the thing that you love to do, you can't do because of this mistake. Because of a mistake.
And shout out to you guys for actually doing better than most adults would do if they made the same mistake. Because there's a lot of adults who are in ministry today and in churches today that if for some reason they're boothing in from the teaching ministry and they're in the worship ministry, forgot their phone and has to stay at their house or something, that they'd end up smashing. And shout out to you guys for like literally being completely innocent, making an innocent mistake, explaining that it was an innocent mistake, and the stories were still running rampant.
Still.
And like that was something that to this day I can reframe a lot of things, but I ain't get to the point where I could reframe that yet. Because, and I'm just being transparent here, because the stories that used to come out about me and the guys, even when we didn't make mistakes like that,
right,
was crazy.
Yeah, you were just blamed for things because it was easy. Oh, that negative thing happened. That seems like something they would do, so you'd get blamed for it. Because you're the black sheep of this community.
Yeah.
And it's like, because you're not fitting the mold, right? Because that's the thing. The thing was that we were held on this pedestal, right? Dance ministry girls, you're up here, an unrealistic expectation, right?
So much pressure.
And so you make this mistake and now you've damaged the image.
It was really about the image.
It was the image. It's why when my parents separated, they're leaders of the choir, right? So when they separate, the image is broken.
They cared more about the image. We can't have
this. So instead of, all right, we need to find support. Because I remember my mom saying to me, I didn't want my marriage to end. She was trying.
Yeah.
But there was no support on how to help like us as youth navigate this era, right? And find our way back, still feel like we have a place. No, you're shunned. And it's so contradictory to God's love. That's the part that's really hard. I mean, if Jesus Christ is ministering to prostitutes, right? Why can't I get that grace and that love when I made a mistake? Why?
Yeah.
And then it gets worse when then now your friends are negatively impacted. So now they do make a even bigger mistake. And then the solution to that is to try to isolate you from your friends. Like, I remember when they told me I couldn't talk to Boyi anymore. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean?
What was the reason that you were a negative influence on her or something? What was it?
No, that she was the negative influence on me.
Which makes absolutely no sense.
Because her and Hector fell, right? They made the mistake. So now you can't talk to each other. So you know what we would do? I would call Hector and then call Steven on three-way. And then he would call Boyi. Like, yo, it was crazy. Just to talk to the people that you care about. They're trying to isolate you, which makes you want to see your friends more. This is your community.
Yeah.
That is not how to handle a solution. And if there's anything that I believe they really should have worked on is trying to figure out how to properly address issues with teenagers.
Yeah. That's the biggest takeaway. Like,
you don't know how to navigate these experiences in a way where, because like as teenagers, when we feel like we're pushed against the wall, we're gonna push back.
Yeah.
Like I never felt judgment from your mom. No. It didn't matter what happened.
Nah. I mean, she judged me because I was her son.
But that's different.
It was different.
Right?
But when it came to like, she was like grace.
Like,
you know what I'm saying? Like she embodied that.
Right.
100%.
Because again, I go back to the same thing. We're already hard on ourselves about letting you down as our leadership. Because we know what's expected.
Yeah.
And so you not giving me the opportunity to explain. I remember Lipe didn't even let me explain myself that day. I was so like taken aback by that. Like, after so many years, you don't trust what I'm going to tell you. You've already believed what you've heard.
He probably had a lot of pressure from his leaders.
And I'm sure that's like me because today. I'm like, yo,
they were rough.
I can't even begin to imagine what they told this person, right? Yeah. What did they tell Lipe? For him to have treated me like that. And I don't even know if he remembers this, right? But like, I remember I was like, but you know me. I remember saying that to him. You know me. And you could see it in his eyes. Like he's struggling. Because I'm sure it's contradictory to what maybe he would have done.
Yeah.
If I know Lipe the way I think I do, and I know I have not been connected to Lipe in many years.
Yeah.
But if I knew Lipe, like it didn't even seem like I was talking to him that day.
Yeah.
And then I'm talking to Fana and I'm like, hey, and I'm getting the same resistance. And I'm like, hold on, what is happening here? These are not the people that I know and I love. Right? And so you pushed us to this corner where we feel like really suffocated and abandoned and alone and shunned. And so it just started like us, like, it's what jump-started the decline for some of our friends within our group.
It did. Yeah. 100% it did. It did.
And I think it's just that it's like, wow, man, how can the church learn to better navigate those situations?
Not just with teens, because also looking at your mom.
With everyone.
We need to be able to take these situations, and I don't want anybody, because I think that there's some aspects of this that is still painful for me and for you, that, you know, I'm going to take to God in my personal time. But don't be like, oh, he's obviously still angry about this stuff, and miss the lesson in this, because the church needs to do a better job. We need to be able to walk in the way that Jesus would. Jesus, you know, and I think about Lipe. Like, you're right. The Lipe that I know would have handled that differently. And when I did the podcast with an episode with him, he was talking about how, yeah, you guys didn't realize that I wasn't that much older than you guys.
At all.
So he was he was literally probably going through the same things you and I were going through at an even higher level, because this guy was the youth pastor, and then he was the senior pastor, the English service pastor, and then he was the senior pastor.
And he's the bishop's son.
Yep. Mad pressure. And it's like, granted, I'm sure if he was here, he wouldn't excuse himself from that mistake. But like, one thing that for me is absolutely ridiculous was how harshly we were treated. Like, that was probably your biggest story. I don't know if you remember my deepest story. And without like going into it far too much, the whole story was on a day that I'm at church in discipleship class on a Friday night as a teenager with you. You and me are both there, right? You were there.
I was there.
Right? We were there. Hector and Steve come to church trashed.
I remember.
Okay? Hector and Steve, right?
Yep, Hector and Steve.
Come to church and they're done, which, listen, bro, is beautiful.
That's how you know.
They could have ran away. And they went to the place that was safest for them. And were not received well.
Right.
Because instead of somebody seeing them and saying, wow, these young guys they're trashed right now. But they came here.
They came here. They're home. And then the other individual in this story, Taina, was so impacted by this too, because she ends up in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. And then
the stories
the
and the
story,
rumors.
Vanessa, the story. There's people to this day that still believe that story.
I know.
And I was at church. I wasn't even there.
And it's like, if you think about it,
I should have left after that.
you probably should have.
I should have left after that because I was tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were people who advocated for me. I think that's what kept me there, because there were people who were like, yo, he was like, there were people who were like, he was sitting in front of me listening about the word. He has nothing to do with this situation. Get your facts straight.
Right.
But
people were headstrong and like dead set on believing the story that they heard.
And that broke something in me.
Yeah.
So I understand why there were people in our friend group, right? There was a lot of people. When it was the biggest, it was like 20, 25 different youth who were in our friend group, right? Like you might hear certain names a lot more because that was the core
That
of
was
it,
the core, right?
Right? But there was a lot more people, and there were people who weren't even part of it who left because of it.
Right.
because they saw how we were judged, and that wasn't church. And listen, I also want to highlight the fact that there were people who still were the light of Jesus during all those times.
Yep.
Because I think back about the international camp we had. This was one of the dopest camps. It was when we were in that huge camp that was mad big, and we had these like cabins. And so Stacy was our cabin leader. It was me, Hector, Steve, Phil, Danny, like the whole crew. It was like if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the years. Remember, Philip never was able to go because his dad didn't let him go. It was one of the years that Philip could go, if I'm not mistaken. And we were at camp, and we're just having the time of our life, yo. And I remember, and there's something I want to point to with this. I remember there was a family. Okay, let me even say it like this, right? Somebody jumped into the lake during the night. And the big rule of the camp was that after certain hours, it was either after certain hours you couldn't go in the lake, or you couldn't go in the lake at all. Do you remember?
I think it was, I don't remember exactly.
I think it was after one of those two,
yeah,
right?
there was like a cutoff.
Right?
Too.
For sure, there was a time frame where you couldn't go into the lake. And there was a group of people who went into the lake. The next morning, and they woke us up in the middle of the night, barging into our room, yelling at Stacy. Why did you let? Because I think he had to go to a meeting or something, and he came back. But he came back. He knew that we were there. We were there the whole time in our room. Yeah. We were awake. I think maybe some of us again, the details are like whatever, but I'm trying to do it, but forget about it. But they barge into our room. They're yelling at Stacy, and the automatic assumption, I'm guessing they didn't find out who it was, they didn't find out who it was. The automatic assumption, they went straight to our room.
Yep.
And there were people that I remember were like, no, it was them. And Stacy was like, it wasn't them. They were with me. I left for a meeting. It was like 10 minutes. You think they went they got ready, ran to the lake, whatever. He's like, it wasn't them. And people were adamant. They wanted it to be us. Yeah. And Stacy would not let it go. He was like, it was not them. I remember him talking to Pastor Martin. I remember him talking to Lipa. I remember he's like, no, it was not them. And he just kept advocating and advocating and advocating and advocating. I remember the next day we got into a bus to drive us to the basketball court. You remember that?
Yeah.
We got into the bus and I sat in the back, and I remember I was so stressed about this whole situation because all we were getting was judgment. And I'm sitting in the back by myself. I'm in my Bruce Wayne moment. I'm just like, nobody talk to me. I'm mad. One of the leaders, who shall not be named, one of the youth leaders comes to the back, sits next to me. Vanessa, I kid you not. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I kid you not. Looks at me and says, Eric, was it you guys who went into the lake? And I said, it wasn't us. With all the sincerity I could muster up, I said, it really wasn't us. And he looked at me and he said, come on. Wow. You could tell me. It was you guys, right? And I said, no, it wasn't us. Vanessa, what do you think happened next? He said, come on, Eric. I know it was you guys. And I said, no, it wasn't us. And you know, I used to get like angry, right? Mm-hmm. And again, that broke something in me too. Right. And being, for the next few days, seeing Stacy advocate for us was so important for me. That's what kept me there. We need more people who advocate for the broken, for people who are going through pain. I get it. We're all going through things. We're all tired. We're all busy. We have a lot on our plate. But we have to advocate. We have to listen for when people need love, for when people need to be heard. You needed to be heard in that moment. You needed to be heard. God forbid I would have stayed home that Friday.
Right.
It could have been really bad. It could have been way worse.
Right. Because now you have no alibi.
Yeah, now I have no alibi. Right? I'm being accused by my church, not even the police, by people in my church for something that wasn't even had anything to do with it.
And that just goes to show you that that target was put on your back. And it didn't matter. I always felt like that. Like, it didn't matter how good you represented. That never left. I remember a church leader coming to me, I will not name this individual, and saying, ever since you connected with this group of people, things are different.
Yeah, what? We love God more, we serve more. Like,
you need to get away from these people because they're gonna ruin your image. And I'm like, I was too young to really understand the implication, right? But at the moment, I'm just like, but I don't understand. We're not doing anything.
yeah.
Like, it just didn't make sense how they were so hyper focused on us not involving ourselves with you and your friends. Like, no one could just explain, like, what is the issue?
Yeah.
Just explain it to me. Because I'm that kind of person, even when I was young. And kids are like that. It needs to make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can give you a legitimate reason on why associating with this person or this group of people is a bad thing, right? Like, if I'm hanging out with a drug dealer, I can understand. Or someone who's promiscuous, I can understand. But just because you're saying so and you're not giving me any evidence, then it just makes me, it's why we attached ourselves so much more. We felt a need to defend you, Steven, Hector. Like, I'm like, no, you don't know them like we know them.
I literally just got transported back to being a 50-year-old because I heard your voice saying that.
Because I was just like, I was just beyond myself. Like, we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't hang out anywhere. Because it was always a thing. And I'm just like, but why? I don't get this, right? And so because no one could really explain it, it just like, and they just did. I think that when they realized they couldn't control it, I think that's when like they were like, okay.
Yeah. I think that human beings, we have a natural tendency to want to control what we don't understand.
Right.
And so they saw a bunch, at least with my friend group, they saw a bunch of kids from the hood who dressed a certain way, who were loud, rough around the edges.
Right.
And they were like, my perception of Christianity is this.
Right.
And here's these group of kids who look just like the kids who are in the streets. And so, and they're not changing. So that must mean that they're not Christian.
Or they're not doing good things.
Right. They're just here to, I don't know. Like, I don't know what was going through.
That's what it felt like. Like, they felt like you and your friends, they came to corrupt. Right?
Yeah. And shout out to your mom, by the way, because your mom never looked at us that way.
No.
Your mom, like, I literally gave a prophetic word saying that we were the way that we were the avenue by which God was going to grow the church. And what happened? Like, is it normal for for whatever age I was, 17-year-old kid to have 50 kids in his living room?
Right.
Is that normal?
Right.
But everybody wanted to villainize me. And then because I was struggling, I was struggling. I've talked about it on the podcast before. I was struggling with my sexuality. I was struggling with fornication. I was struggling with lust and pornography. Like, my whole issue was all of those things. Nobody was like, well, you know, good job on not ever smoking. Good job on not being a gangbanger. Good job. Like, I struggled in a certain area. Nobody came and said, okay, let's figure this out.
Right.
Let's work together, Eric. How can you be pure? You know how bad, Vanessa, I wanted to be pure?
And the guilt that you carry because you're fighting this part of yourself. Because there's the part of you that's struggling, there's a part of you that loves God so much that you're still fighting for your place in this congregation. I can't even begin to imagine what that was like. And let me tell you, I knew that you were having those struggles, right? And I still would have gone to bat for you.
You always did.
Because you were still there trying. And I think that maybe that's the part that the church misses. Like, church is for the ones that need saving.
Yeah.
I'm still here, still trying. And it's like, you know, because there's no support for that, right? There's no room for that. Then, yeah, you end up where I ended up or where you ended up in your journey. Because I think eventually it's just really exhausting too.
Yeah,
right?
you get tired.
You get tired.
Like, if you guys want me to be a villain so bad,
then that's it.
Then that's it. And I wanted to just give up so many times. I don't know how, honestly, I don't know how I made it as far as I did.
As far as you did, yeah, I'm really impressed because, like you said, like, you're bringing all these youth, right? There's that pressure. Like, I don't think anyone in the history of that church brought as many kids to the church like you did. And I think that's why I was like in awe of you. Why? Because like I said it in the beginning, people are drawn to you. Even when you felt like you were not a good example, even when you were struggling, they were still drawn to you. You are, if you have a purpose in life, right? I think we saw it very early on. At least part of your purpose.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what my journey would have looked like had I not become friends with you, had you not brought your friends to the church. I don't know if I would have stayed as long.
Yeah. To
be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't know anyone else that was into God like we were.
Nah. Because the people who judged us so relentlessly, they weren't like when the fence outside, cuando le dieron la cosita esa, they were like, we want to paint the fence gold. We need volunteers. Who was there painting the fence? Right. When they needed to break off a piece of the altar to rebuild it, and they asked, there was no discipleship class going on, and they asked for volunteers for people to help break it down on a Friday night. What do we like to do? We like to go to the movies. Mm-hmm. That was like all of our thing. Like, we loved going to the movie theaters, right? Mm-hmm. And going to the mall. And we gave up our Friday night as teenagers to come to church. Orlando over here, you know, Orlando liked to break stuff.
Because he was like a bodybuilder.
Yeah. He was just like, my dad is a carpenter and electrician and plumber and builds houses in Cuba.
Yeah.
And he's like, I could operate in the same thing. So he's just like, yeah, entonces, let's break it. And we were there. I didn't know what I was doing.
I know.
And there were people in the church who that was their profession,
Right.
who were not there.
Who were not there.
But we were there. We were there because we saw that these things it wasn't just the fact that we were serving our church. It wasn't just the fact that it was ministry. We saw these things as a way to serve God.
Right.
And then for us to go through the next day being looked at the ways that we were looked at, it was terrible. And it's like, for me, this is a problem with like the whole church, like the church worldwide, I mean, right? But also I feel like specifically in the Spanish culture, it's a huge issue of like, I think we've gotten better, but back then, like legalism and just judgment and the image, right? How you present yourself, that is very Hispanic culture. Like you have to present well.
Yeah.
Even if you're poor, you have to look like you're not poor. Right. Even if you are doing garbage, like you got your junk in your closet, you have to be a presentable man or woman. Even if your marriage is in shambles, you have to act like everything is okay in public. Yep. Like this is how our cultures are. Right. And it's so unhealthy. Right. And we come into the church and we continue that same image. It's all about image. It's all about image. We carry that in our DNA and we just want to present well, but we don't do the work to actually be well, both collectively and individually. Yeah. Right now, shout out to millennials, our generation, because we put in work. We go to therapy. The fact that, like, one of the things that I am immensely proud of is the fact that it is widely recognized that millennials and Gen Z and probably all the generations after that, fathers are present fathers. They're changing diapers. Apparently, I found out like 3 years, I didn't know this growing up, but I found out like 3-4 years ago from somebody randomly that there's like a huge thing in the Dominican Republic in DR where dads don't change diapers. They don't hold their kids or something like that. I don't know if all of them are like that, but I heard that that's like common. And I'm like, that's so weird. Why as Hispanic people, why do we have things like this?
Gender roles.
Yeah. Gender roles is so crazy in Hispanic culture. And it's like, we need to be careful to not bring our culture into how we do ministry, into how we serve people. Who we are does not supersede who God has called us to be. It's why we make it so difficult to look beyond image and look at that individual person. When what should have happened to you in that time, you shouldn't have had to say, you know me. Like, we love you, Lipe. Right?
We do.
You made a mistake. We all do, right? Like, we all make mistakes. Right. I've made my fair share of mistakes. Right. But in that moment, what somebody in the church needed to do was, as soon as you got there, pull you to the side. They should have already told people, hey, let's not talk about that right now. Let's wait until they get here. Or they should have been the ones going to get you guys, because why were you guys trying to figure out how to get to church? Makes no sense. I remember when this was happening. I was at church already. Mm-hmm. I remember when you guys walked in. The image is seared in my head. Mm-hmm. I remember when you guys walked in. I remember the tension in the room. I remember, like, I didn't know what happened, right? But I wasn't like thinking the absolute worst of you guys. Granted, I'm your friend, right? But I'm like, what happened? And we should be asking what happened more.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
Right? It should feel like that I have an opportunity to explain myself and feel like you'll give me the chance and listen.
Yeah.
You know, I think being heard in relationship, right? That's so important that when I'm talking to someone that I feel like they're listening to me. Mm-hmm. You know, and when you, from the moment that you are interacting with this individual, that they're feeling that resistance, like you're not interested or you're not going to hear them, I mean, it's really detrimental to the relationship.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially when it's someone that you trust, right? Like, the person that you least expect. And that's why I think like expectations too play such a role in that,
Yeah.
right? You set a standard for me, and I have this like image that I need to meet, and even Lipe and Johanna, they had their image that they need to. So like all this pressure from all sides, it doesn't give room for what should be happening. You're just so worried about the image being broken or tainted. You're not concerned with the person. And you know, I think that I would love to see a space today where there's more of that. You know, if there is someone who always represented that for me in my life, even after I left the church, it was Ronnie. I mean, Ronnie is probably the only reason that I still think about one day reconnecting with a church.
Yeah.
I remember leaving, right, when I first left, and I got a call from Ronnie. And we're just talking and we're just having like normal conversation. And I remember at the end of that, I'm like, you know, I'm sorry. I remember apologizing to him. I was like, you know, Ronnie, I'm sorry that I haven't been to church in a long time, and you probably feel like I failed you. And he starts laughing, and he's like, Vanessa, I love you. And it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. He's like, I love you, and I'm here for you. And even when he got sick, I remember when I still remember that conversation when he called me, when he found out about his diagnosis, he called me. I was devastated. And this man is on the other line, consoling me.
Yeah. Sounds like Ronnie.
And he was always my connection to church. When I lost my faith, he was still my connection. And so losing him, right? I remember the last time I spoke to him and when I visited him, I was devastated because I knew he was gonna die. And I remember his words. I remember him telling me, you know, I've lived my purpose. Isn't that amazing that at 31, someone can tell you that they have no regrets? Till this day, I aspire to be like that. I don't know if he knows how important his presence was in my life. I mean, there were times where I was hopeless, and thinking of him got me through.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me, like, you know, God brought me here for a purpose, and I lived my purpose. And I couldn't wrap my head around that. I was just like, no. I was 25 years old? Like, I could not understand that.
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, like, there's so much that we still have to do.
Yeah.
I had envisioned, like, I'm going to get married and Ronnie's going to be there. And I'm going to have kids and Ronnie's going to be there, right? And then he's not, right? And I remember for his funeral, it was the first time I went back to the church. And I debated. Oh my God, I struggled so much with this. Am I gonna go? Am I not gonna go? Am I gonna go? Am I not gonna go? Am I gonna go? And I remember, I don't know if this is real or not, but I remember hearing his voice in my head like, you can do this.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the church. I mean, that was like, you would have thought the president died. There was so many people there.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That's how you know he lived out his purpose. He was right. That was a manifestation of what he told me.
Yeah.
The people that came from all over, not just Jersey, not just this country.
Yeah. He impacted so many people.
He was, if there was anyone in this life that represented who Jesus was, I mean,
I say the same thing. Always.
I don't think I'll ever meet anybody like that. And I am so grateful to have had him, that even when I left church, he didn't treat me differently. He didn't judge me for my choice. He still prayed for me. When he would call me, he would pray for me. He would still send me scripture through text. I read this and I thought of you, Mayo kid. And so when he was gone, I made a promise. And I told him, I will find my way back one day. I don't know how long that's going to take. But I did. Because he always reminded me of how important that relationship was to me. That connection to my faith, it was very important to me. And despite me leaving the congregation, I still walk this life today with a lot of those morals still very much instilled in me. And I think that having him is why I started my healing journey. When he passed away, it took a few months, but I started therapy because I was really struggling with his death.
Yeah.
More than anyone could imagine. I had lost my best friend. I didn't have anybody else that knew or understood me like that. And I was really afraid to let people in. I did not make adult friends. When I lost you guys, when we disconnected, I had no friends.
Wow.
Because I didn't trust anyone. If my family, who I loved and I thought would always be there, abandoned me, why would I open myself up again like that? You know? And so him passing away really pushed me. It took about like a year, but it pushed me to finally start therapy because I was so lost. I was so lost, you know, and while losing him was really tough, the fact that we can still talk about him like if he were here, right? The fact that his image is so present, I could still hear his voice.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I can ever forget his laugh. You know, like, as time goes on, things fade, right? But, like, memories of Ronnie are so vivid for me. So vivid for me.
I heard his laugh when you said that he laughed, when you said what you said on the phone.
Yeah. Our ice cream dates, our talks in his car, like, his gentleness. I feel like through the years, I've met people that I don't know if Ronnie led them to me, that have like pieces of him, that softness and that gentleness. I have a friend, my best friend Jennifer, that when we first met, she just sat at my desk and just like blurted her whole life out, and I was like, this girl is weird. And like, she just wanted to be my friend. And I'm like, I'm not interested in being friends with anyone. And she pushed and pushed.
Wow.
And was so graceful, like so gentle. And she's such a loving person. I think it was the first friend that I made that loved me that way, with that gentle love. Like Ronnie did.
Yeah.
And I remember not too long ago, I told her, I was like, You are the closest friend that I've had in a long time that reminds me of Ronnie. And I told her, I was like, I'm really grateful that you didn't quit. Because today, I mean, she's like my sister. Like, we sit there and have like spiritual talks. There's not a lot of people I can do that with. And we'll sit and we'll talk about God, and she watches like Sunday service on YouTube, and I can have those discussions with her. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to connect back to that part of myself. Having her as a friend healed me. That tough exterior that I'm not gonna let anyone in. The work that Ronnie was doing, Jennifer continued. Even though she didn't know it.
Yeah.
She was slowly breaking down those walls. And she's like a reminder of the gentleness that you can have towards other people. You know, and she's Puerto Rican, so she's feisty, right?
Yeah.
But she's soft. She's gentle and loving. You feel her love.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm very grateful to have had the experience of that friendship with Ronnie, because then I see bits of him and my friendships with other people.
That's beautiful.
And I love that. I love that. And I hope to fulfill that promise to myself, you know, to find my way back to that love.
You will. If there's anybody I'm placing a bet on, it's you. I don't care if
Don't make bets.
I don't care. Don't go fuerte on me. I don't care if you're 99 years old and you're like, voy a servir otra vez. God, I give you my heart. It's like, and then I'm there. I'm like, yes, I knew it. You know, like, all jokes aside, if there's anybody I'm placing a bet on, it's you, because I think that God places a bet on you. Like, God's, like, you're marked. I'll never forget. It was somebody in our group. I can't remember who it was, but somebody, I don't remember if they were core or not core, but somebody said one time after they had like backslid, I saw them somewhere in Elizabeth. Super vague memory, but I remember what they said. They said, no matter what I do, he's in the back of my mind. He's there. I can never be content in my separation from God, because he's always there. And that, to me, that can be a very like heavy thing, right? It can be very disquieting. But if you can reframe that and think, wait a minute, he's always there, even when we're not okay. Which is literally everything that Valley of the Heroic is about. It's like, when we're not okay, when we're in the valley, when we're in a tough place, when we're in all this brokenness, anything we might experience, God is there. He meets you in your place of pain. And sadly, so many people failed you, including me. We could have done more. We should have done more. And in spite of that, God has been with you all this time. And he's not giving up. Like, that's why I say, if there's anybody I'm going to place a bet on, it's you. Like, I'm not even thinking twice about you fulfilling that promise. It's not like I wouldn't even bat an eyelash. It's just a question of time when you feel ready, when you feel like, you know, obviously it's obvious that this is a part of your healing journey, being able to talk about it, being able to, like, for the first time. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, I'm extremely honored. I'm so honored that you shared, I know that there's like, we went through a lot of this together, but you still shared your story with me. And I'm extremely honored. I'm grateful to be here all these years later. I'm grateful to see what God is doing in your life even now. I'm grateful to see how much you've healed, even though the devil wanted to take you out. Look how you are now. You could still smile. You're still you.
Yeah.
You are 110% you. Obviously, you're not the same Vanessa. I'm not the same Eric.
Right.
But you're still you. You are walking in the boldness of who God made you to be. And it's beautiful to see. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. I think that when I saw that you started this podcast, I remember thinking, like, it's so fitting for who I remember you to be. You always captivated people with your words. So it's so fitting that you've chosen this route to communicate and speak on all of the topics that you speak in a way, it's very graceful when you speak. And I watch your videos and when I go on Instagram, I'll watch them. And every time I'm like, yep. It just hits so well. So I feel like wherever this is going to take you, I'm so certain that you're on the right path.
Thank you.
Because this makes sense to me. You doing this makes so much sense to me. And I'm very thankful for you giving me an opportunity, to have this discussion and to, to talk to my friend.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't feel awkward, despite all the time that has passed.
Yeah.
And more importantly, that you open this space to anyone. It goes back to what we talked about, that anyone can feel welcome to be here to have a discussion with you, and for it to feel genuine and organic and not feel judged.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, I was a little concerned, like, oh, Eric's like Christian and I'm not really like Christian right now. So how is that gonna be?
You're still a Christian.
I know, right? But obviously our paths are like different right now.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like that. So
that is like the biggest compliment in the world, because if anything, I spent so much time under people's microscope, seeing so many people doing it wrong, seeing so many people just like hurting, that, I mean, if people could just know my heart, right? Even back then, I wish people could just see my heart. If there's anybody who really saw my heart, I know Hector did, because I'll never forget Hector. It was the same day that he came to church drunk. We were driving home and he just started laying into me. Like, he was being honest, brutally honest. Hector's already very honest.
Right.
So when his tongue is loose, imagine how honest he could be. And he was laying into me. He was like, yo, you're messing up. And he's like, you're not doing this and this and that. And he's like going in on me. And I'm like, really, how, like, I really struggled with shame and a lot of those different things. So I was feeling it. And he goes, but then he says this, he said, but the thing that I love about you most is that you never give up. You keep falling on your face, but you keep getting back up again. And he had just gone in on me about how I was failing them, right? mind you, we all didn't realize that I was a kid leading kids, right? Like, and I know that many of them probably realize that now. Maybe some people who came to cell group are still mad at me. I don't know, or whatever. Maybe they don't even see it that way. But he was like, yeah, you know, you got to do this and you're not doing it, whatever. But then he's like, but you never give up. And that stayed with me. Like, and it's true. I just don't give up. I want to sometimes. And I have given up in certain aspects and times and whatever, but I get back on the horse. And if there's anything that I want people to take from me is that you can make a comeback. There's never anything that you can do that disqualifies you from relationship with God. Maybe you can't be a pastor because you were out there wilding. You know what I'm saying? Like, you did something really bad, like whatever, I don't know. But one thing I know is that if you want to be in relationship with God again, there's nothing. What can separate us from the love of Christ? Neither height nor depth. Nothing in this world can separate us from his love. Yeah. And again, I'm just really grateful to be here with you. I hope that there's something that everybody who's watching really took away from it, because I think that there's so much to learn from us just being transparent about our story. And I even hope that there's some people who may have been there during those times, whatever role they might have had, who can listen and take something from it, because there's so many different directions to it. About people in leadership, young people who are young and then are in ministry, and so much to take from it that I just want us to all just do a better job.
Yeah. And I would like to say this, that despite feeling at the time like the leadership failed, right? People like who I looked up to, Lipe, Joanna, Naomi, Allen, all these people, there's still so much love for them.
Facts.
That doesn't taint how important they were to my life, and that still today I wish them well.
Yeah.
That I still think of them. Like, I look at Naomi and Allen and I'm like, man,
they're killing it.
These people are still like such a beautiful representation of leadership and marriage and all these things, right? For a lot of us that maybe don't have people in our lives we can look to for that.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, I'm in a place in my life where I still very much have wonderful memories with them and very beautiful feelings for them, because, you know, I could have been out here doing something else. So Lipa took a chance on me and opened this door for me, and these people believed in me and trusted in me. And like you said earlier, they were not that much older than us.
They weren't.
So, you know, that gives you a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
You know, and
it really
I think
does.
that, you know, they still they deserve all the grace.
Yeah.
Just like we did, right? They do too.
Yeah. Grace is the end of the story.
It really is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Guys, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation. We love you guys. Make sure that you hit the like button, share it with somebody, and make sure that you hit subscribe if you are not subscribed already. Thank you for being here. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Take it easy. Peace.